Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Rob Simonds, and I'm the board president of the Downtown Chamber Series. And I'm here with somebody who needs no introduction, the founder and director of Downtown Chamber Series, Mark Dix. And we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming concerts in October 9th, 10th, and 11th. And this very unique and exciting program of all-American composers. But we're going to get into the weeds a little bit about the piece that anchors the whole thing, George Crumb's Black Angels. So welcome, Mark. And tell us a little bit about this program and about what drew you to programming this very idiosyncratic piece.
George Crumb's Black Angels Downtown Chamber Series has performed it. This will be our third time. It seems to roll around about every 10 years, but not on a fixed schedule. And it's a piece that I was drawn to when I first was looking for unusual repertoire for our series. Our series is held in art spaces in downtown Phoenix. And that gives us a great artistic freedom to really be looking for repertoire that otherwise might not be performed. But repertoire, most importantly, that's very powerful and engaging for the musicians and, of course, the audience. So the Kronos recording of Black Angels that I had heard for the first time 20 years ago, thought I've got to do this on DCS. And some of it has to do with the complexity of the piece that attracted us as musicians. The score is, totally beautiful work of art in itself, written long before we had all the fancy computer programs that do the work for us. It's all written in his hand with great detail. It looks like the wiring diagram to an F-16 fighter plane or something. And then it has a tremendous amount of other percussion elements and other things, such as wine glasses that are pitched. There's 20 of them, all kinds of other techniques in how we play our instruments that attracted us to the piece. So as far as why this piece, well, it has a tremendous intensity to it, emotional intensity that drew us in.
I will say that the scores are really important too, because, and it aligns nicely with DCS because there is such an emphasis on visual art. These are literally museum quality pieces. His scores are all handwritten. I mean, every note was his hand, and they have been hung on walls in museums because of their just striking artistic beauty. But it's not just beauty, it's not just complexity, it's not just the craft for craft's sake. This, like you said, is very evocative and very visceral music. I think of Crumb as a successor to Charles Ives. So yes, he's pushing the boundaries. We would call him an avant-garde composer, but his music is very clear, it's very vivid. And I mean, one of the biggest fans of this piece was David Bowie, and so this kind of experimental but still the pop realm. But this music was also used in The Exorcist, so it's got this kind of many lives in its past 50 or so years of existence. I want to ask you to describe more about George Crumb's. He called it the search for sound, right? This very visceral and embodied experience of listening to this music. Talk to us a little bit more about what is it like to create these sounds, so the extended techniques on the instrument, but also how do all these other things like the wine glasses and the bass bow and the metallic instruments fit into the performance?
So under the larger umbrella of this being written in a time of war, 1970, which is a title that's been used as far back as Haydn during the Austrian mobilization in 1796. And unfortunately, in humanity, we always seem to live in a time of war somewhere. So as an artist, Crumb is trying to capture sounds that the musicians can create, and through his language of writing, that can be achieved. So similar to how a filmmaker wants to have a certain sound of what the laser beam coming out of a TIE fighter sounds like. And so they figured out that the suspension wires for a power pole, if you hit those with a rod, that it creates a choo, choo type sound. And that is what the sounds of the lasers coming out of a TIE fighter came from. In a similar vein as filmmakers, Crumb is doing that with a string quartet. So he titles it Electric String Quartet, which provides the ability to play things very, very quietly, but amplify them so that the audience can hear. And then doing other things to our instruments that just had not been done before. But once again, not doing them in a gimmicky fashion just because it's academic and interesting, but because it's creating a soundscape. So the wine glasses, there's 20 of them. And three of the string players are playing them underneath a cello solo, this beautiful, sweeping, powerful solo. So in that moment, the wine glasses are all pitched. So we are reading the score for the notes to our glasses. And when I first did this, the first two times, I was playing them the way you would do at Thanksgiving, with a wet finger around the rim of the glass. But looking closer at the score on this round, we found that no, he wants them played with the bow. So we actually have a bow. Which creates, with chords that all three of us playing at the same time, a really amazing sound. As far as the insects that Rob alluded to, those can be done, just with playing very high register, very quietly. Where you have all three of us playing, or four of us playing at the same time, those types of effects. We have something where he's trying to get the sound of ancient instruments, which he writes in the score, similar to a viol, where you would have taken the instrument and played it on your lap. But he's to get that sound, to make it really sound childless, almost childlike, like a toy. Instead of bowing the instrument in the traditional place, which would be obviously with the bow here, and then putting down the finger to change the pitch. Instead, he's doing it reversed. He's having us, the bow on this side of my fingers, between the nut and my fingers, to create this very unusual sound. When you have three of us doing that, underneath the sound of the insects, it gets quite an amazing sensation. Then there's some other things, such as he's got gongs that are being hit, and also cymbals that are put on tops of our fingers. And so we are, with our left hand, changing the pitches of the instrument, but with our right hand, moving them closer and farther away from the bridge. Once again, these things can sound quirky and gimmicky, but the way he writes it together in the moment of the concert, it really takes you somewhere. And our audiences that have experienced this piece have told us repeatedly how powerful it was for them. Particularly, interestingly, audience members who don't typically come see chamber music, that it really captured their interest. And a lot of those folks now have been coming to our concerts for years because of their experience hearing Black Angels.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the process of learning this. So you've referenced a couple of times that this is the third performance. So how is it different now performing this piece than it was 15 years ago or 5 years ago?
I think it largely has to do with the sense of responsibility. To do George Crumb's work justice requires a tremendous amount of preparation, both with hanging out in department stores in the wedding registry department, trying to find 20 wine glasses that are each in the right pitch range, and then adding the right amount of water to get it where it's supposed to be. So that takes a lot of preparation and the other percussion equipment we have to compile. But also work like this, like really, there's a danger in the arts of us spending so much time creating our art and not spending enough time building audiences. And a big thrust of Downtown Chamber Series is our art spaces. We aren't just performing in buildings, churches and concert halls. We are strategically webbed with our visual arts community in Phoenix. And one of those spaces is Alwun House. And they have been around for 50 years. It's an old 100-year-old house, and inside they have art exhibits. And outside in their garden area, they have a stage for performances. And they do amazing things all year long. And one of them in the fall is their Monsters Menagerie, which has really fantastic visual art and sculptures, arachnids that are the size of RVs crawling around the place. And so to have Black Angels performed in a sterile sort of university type setting has a lot of control acoustically, but it loses a lot of other elements that are important to Downtown Chamber Series. But that creates a challenge for this concert because we're playing outside with all this detail in the score. It of course needs to be amplified, and it's harder to play outside. So as part of our community, Scott Morrow, our sound engineer, is taking care of that challenge for us.
Yeah, the problem-solving aspect of this piece probably never ends.
No, and we also, as in rehearsal, we have to. The musicians who perform on Downtown Chamber Series have been playing their instruments their whole lives. They're very experienced. They can sight read, difficult repertoire. But a piece like this forces all of us to really slow down and look at tremendous detail and do things we've not done before, such as finger your instrument, as I showed you, backwards and playing up on the fingerboard and still trying to get a sound that works. All of that creates an intensity that is really palpable.
Well, Mark, I want to wrap up here. So first of all, as an audience member and as a supporter of the Chamber Series, thank you for all the effort that goes into making these things happen. We'll put a link to buying tickets for the concert in the email or in the social media post that goes out in, and we'll make it easy for you to find that. So thanks again for tuning in, and thank you, Mark, for making time to talk us through this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. Hope you can make it.